This video is for anybody who is in an in-between period, in a transition of some kind, in an aftermath. Maybe you're experiencing a pivot. This could be anything like you sold a business, you're transitioning your career, you decided to take a parenting break. I mean, somebody has to take care of that kid, right? Maybe you were a pro or college athlete and you're transitioning away from something that's been your entire life. But today I'm going to talk about what to do when everybody's saying,
"Can't wait to see what you do next."
How do I know? I'm in the thick of it right now. I sold my business, my online course business that I built for 7 years by trial and error with a 7-figure acquisition. I sold it 18 months ago and I've been in that transition period. And I'm gonna let you know what has helped me and is still helping me as I manage this in between. Okay, so I grew up as the youngest of 5 girls and we all played sports. My dad said that he wanted to keep us out of trouble and the best way that he knew how to do that was to keep us active in sports. So 3 of us actually played college basketball. One of my sisters was a cheerleader in college. We were all athletic. So we grew up with kind of an achievement mindset and we've carried that with us into adulthood. I've got a sister who's a successful meteorologist, a luxury real estate broker, a successful loan officer, a nurse practitioner, and then there's little old me. I'm actually the tallest of the 5. So when I started a business 7 years ago, a lot of those things I learned in sports and with an achievement mindset were really helpful and were right in line to kind of my ingrained DNA of achievement and goal orientation. But what about when that season or that chapter is closed? I had a lot of people well-wishing me, congratulating me, and without exception, typically saying,
"Can't wait to see what you do next."
Or,
"What are you doing next, Lindsey?"
For someone who has an achievement mindset, it's kind of like an ice sculpture under hot lights. But I remember feeling that kind of urgency, right? And thinking like, oh, well, I better do something else pretty quick and it better be bigger and better. Or maybe that this was just a coincidence and I didn't really achieve much. I've got to keep moving the bar. So after I sold the business, I was insistent on having a big celebration where we had those who worked for us, those who cheered for us, came and we celebrated. And I had some time to kind of think how I was going to approach that next 18 months. I actually reached out to a few mentors as well and asked their opinion. And I came to the conclusion of for the next year, at minimum, I was going to be disciplined to be passive. Kind of a weird concept. Usually we have to be disciplined to stay motivated, to keep going and keep performing our best all the time, right? Or as much as possible. So this was a new mindset and thought process for me to be disciplined, to be passive. So I made that decision to let my ego die and sail into the sunset. And that even though maybe people were looking or watching as to what I was going to do next, and actually they don't care. They're too worried about their own goals and their own lives. And whenever I'm ready to dive back in, those who love me and support me are going to be right there to cheer me on. But I also decided it wasn't worth it to make decisions based on outside expectation or what I perceived to be their expectation. So staying disciplined to be passive. But for me, I mean, I'm the girl who started a business while she was getting chemotherapy for cancer. So of course I can't sit completely still, right? We can't do that. And I have a video here about my experiences with cancer, tried to lighten it up by making it fact or fiction. So check that out if you're interested in more there. So while being disciplined to be passive, I also made a commitment to explore and to try some things, but on my own timetable and what fit in with my family. So I started by kind of identifying some weaknesses or skills that I wish I had had in my previous business and in those 7 years, and started to think about, well, how can I acquire those skills? One of them was, hey, I did really well on Instagram. Wasn't easy, took a lot of time, took a lot of consistency, but I did pretty well on that platform. I know how the platform works. But if I were to try a different platform, what would be the biggest bang for my buck? Where would the content live on? Where could it maybe have some SEO power? Where could I learn a new skill? So I decided to try YouTube. Going really well so far. I mean, I have like 26 subscribers. So if you want to subscribe, feel free. I would love to have you. I'd also love you to give me a comment down below. Let me know if you've ever been in one of these transition phases. But do you feel like that's embarrassing for me to like, okay, I have 26 subscribers when I had over 100,000 on a different platform? It might be from the outside looking in, but for me, I'm like, hey, I'm doing what I want to do, which is continuing to learn and grow. So I don't care if I have thousands and thousands of subscribers right now. I'm finding joy in creating, learning, and growing. So other skills that I feel like could be good to gain more knowledge for me is like, would love to learn how to edit a little bit better. Edit, whether that be reels, whether that be a YouTube video. So editing would be cool for me to learn. In a second, I'm going to talk about something that really helps me simplify kind of where I'm at that on my career path. It's called the S curve of learning. Whitney Johnson from Disrupt Yourself talks about it a ton. She's actually one of the mentors I reached out to get help kind of formulating my plan with this transition process. So stick around, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But first I want to talk about something else that I committed to, was trying things out without committing long term, and especially committing too quick. For me, I wanted this at least for that year. Going back to the stay disciplined to be passive is I just wanted to dabble, and I wanted to see what lights me up, what gives me reward, what am I good at again. Like, I wanted to explore all that again. So I didn't want to commit, but I also didn't want to completely stop, because for me, intellectual stimulation and career advancement is part of my identity, and it's really, really rewarding to me. So trying things without committing, doing it where it fit in with my lifestyle, my schedule, my family, and not going all in, because in this year of exploring, I just didn't want to tie myself down. Here's the fourth one I committed to. Before I made the decision to sell my business, I was talking with one of my business coaches, Tony, shout out Tony, and he said, if you do decide to do this, you better have a plan. Otherwise, you'll find yourself at the local bar drinking yourself to death. Okay. Tony had a part-time job on Scared Straight. Obviously, Tony doesn't beat around the bush. He just gets straight to the point. And I thought it was silly, and I laughed at it at the time. By the way, I've never had a drop of alcohol in my life, but that's beside the point. I understood the concept of what he was saying. He basically was saying, if you don't have a plan, because you've been so tied to this identity, you could unravel and self-destruct, and you most likely will. So this fourth pillar, I didn't commit to out of the gate, because I heard that advice from Tony, and I was like, oh, I got this. So about 6 months in, I started to understand what Tony was saying about the dangers of self-destructing after you've been a part of something and built something that was inherently yours. Because I started to have little pecks at my self-worth, okay? Little negative head talk. And I really had to kind of sit down. I had these conversations with my husband. I had conversations with my therapist about, I'm having like these little pecks at my self-worth, and it doesn't logically make sense to me, but I'm struggling with it. What I had to commit to was some self-worth reinforcement, and kind of changing the tables on myself and getting curious about, okay, well, why am I having these hits on my self-worth? Well, because I kind of grew up having this achievement mindset, which is not bad and has helped me in so many ways. But right now, my achievement is more aligned with my family, and aligned with being a good person in my community, and aligned with being helpful inside my extended family. So the sole basis of my achievements were less tangible. It wasn't like, okay, you ran this sale, you made this revenue, or you launched this webinar, you made this revenue. So that's cool, and that's an achievement, and that's a dopamine hit, and some self-worth can be wrapped up into that. But really, I needed to shift my internal dialogue daily of that, what I was doing inside the walls of my own home, with my children, with my spouse, and my community, and my extended family, was a huge achievement. It might not be transactional like making sales inside a business, but was immensely valuable. So I told you I'd get to the S curve of learning, and Whitney Johnson, she has this podcast called Disrupt Yourself. And so I listened to every episode, totally fell in love with it. So Whitney talks a lot about the S curve of learning, especially when it comes to business. She talks about the beginning being the launch point, and it's probably the very most important point, because you have to have the courage to start and to launch. When I launched my business, I had no business background. I had experience as a nurse in the hospital. I saw a gap. I saw something that needed innovation, and I took that step forward. And I had a lot of ups and downs, and things that worked well and things that blew up in my face, right? So that launch point is the beginning. And then as you start to gain a little momentum, she calls that kind of the sweet spot, okay? When you're getting some momentum and growth is happening, but not super rapidly. Then she calls the top mastery, where growth and advancements are happening all the time, and you're not necessarily getting those dopamine hits because everything's easy, everything's habit. It doesn't take a lot of effort to maintain that mastery level. Then here's where it gets interesting, is that you can really only stay at mastery for so long. And at some point, you're gonna need to drop back down to the launch point again. So that's what that transition phase is, whether you sold a business, or you're taking a parenting break, or you're an athlete that's transitioning into real world life, whether you're getting a divorce. Just a massive change is happening in your life, and it's okay. It's okay to kind of feel like a baby again at something that you're doing, right? At that launch point. So there's Whitney. I actually was on her podcast. I reached out to her and told her about my story, and she had me on, and I was like blown away. So I'll link that episode below if you're interested in learning. Last thing I'll mention is this book by Apollo Anton Ono, the Olympic speed skater, called Hard Pivot. Started reading it after I sold my business, and it's just been a game changer for me in like changing your expectations, getting rid of timelines, getting curious about what lights you up, what's rewarding rewarding, what you're so good at, rather than your resume and your credentials on paper and your past experience. That can be reinvented whether you're 10 years old or 90 years old. Hope you're doing well. If you're in a season of change, leave a question or a comment down. Would love to interact with you and hope you enjoyed it. See you guys next time.